Now, while some South Africans still seek to understand the financial implications of withdrawing from the two-pot system, a poll conducted by the SABC shows those who intend to withdraw from their savings pot will use it to settle debt. At the same time, 25% indicate that they will spoil themselves with the money. The much-anticipated reform comes into effect on the 1st of September. Now, through the system, one will be able to withdraw a portion of one's retirement savings without the need to resign from the pension fund. Let's explore this further now in partnership with Sanlam. We speak to Glacier by Sanlam CEO, Khanyi Nzukuma, who joins us now for a discussion. Khanyi, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I mean, you see the poll and you can see that some people are already ready to spoil themselves. And we were watching, some of what's happening on social media. People are saying that they're now going to be going on holiday and all of that. So is that wise, especially when someone says, I'm withdrawing in order to be able to then spend it on a holiday or settle my debt?
Bongwe, good evening. It was from our perspective, we certainly don't agree with that. So for us, the purpose for government this legislation is to strike a balance because, especially post-COVID, there's been quite a big pressure on financial affordability and people staying above board. So we see a balance where people can have access to a bit of a pool of their savings, but in a very controlled, accessible way, but then at the same time being able to save, to be able to have a fairly good retirement at the end. So certainly for us, the accessibility to the savings pot or to that portion is not to spoil yourself. It is intended to make sure you can close the gaps in terms of emergencies that you find yourself in, because you can see all the surveys and the data that you see tell us one thing. They tell us that people often resign to have access to their pension fund. Interestingly, SARS did a statistic between 2016 and 2018. There were 700,000 people that resigned, obviously with an intention to get access to their pension fund. And certainly that is not the intention of saving, for a country.
Yeah, and Khanyi, there are some people, though, who are upset right now, who are saying that, there doesn't seem to be enough money then to go around, especially with the cap that they can now withdraw and the part that they cannot touch. So what are some of the caps and what are the tax implications?
That's a very important thing, Bongwe, because we think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding or miscommunications. So if you look at the pots, as we call them, actually the right word is components. So your vested component, obviously, is for your existing fund, is of 31st August, and that is locked, and the rights and the privileges that you've got still stay the same. So the only thing that changes now is these two new pots, which is now the retirement, which will be 2/3 of your contribution, and the 1/3, which now is what we call the savings. What is quite interesting is that the savings pot is basically the 1/3 that you normally take when you retire. Now it's just being fast-tracked to give you access on an annual basis. Coming back to the caps, so what will happen is there will be a 10% seeding of your vested pot into the savings pot just to fund it. Also, what is quite important is that you do this tax-free, so there is no tax directive that you need. Even when you transfer money between the different pots, there is no tax directive what you need. So the seeding is 10% of your vested pot up to 30,000, and that is once off. Because I've read somewhere where people think there will be this seeding on an annual basis. It's once off, it's 30,000. But once now you've done the seeding, so anything that is in your savings pot, you've got access to it. That is also very important. So in other words, whether you contribute or you put a lump sum of 50,000 at some stage, or you contribute whatever you contribute, at any stage, you can be able to draw all of that money. There's no maximum limit. The only condition says you must draw minimum 2,000, but the upside is what you can draw.
And the tax implications?
Tax, I think when I look at the new two-pot, for me, the tax implications is probably the biggest thing that we all need to understand. So you get tax on your marginal tax rate, and there's a good reason for that, because I've seen questions where people are saying, why are we not being taxed in the same way as you tax, for instance, lump sums at retirement? The reason is because this is this is deemed by SARS as an annual income event. It's like your salary. So your salary is taxed at a marginal rate. So that is probably the one thing that people need to understand, that SARS will tax at marginal rate, but also very important, once you apply for the tax directive, SARS will also check if you don't owe any tax. So which means you could end up with nothing in terms of what you take back. If, for instance, you owe tax, and at the same time, if your marginal tax rate is higher. So you get a double whammy in terms of what you walk away with.
So, Khanyi, that has led some people to say that then this is a scam. I'm sure you've heard this. Some people are saying that this is a scam because if I'm owing SARS, then I don't get my money. But then in some instances, maybe the tax that they take is going to be more. So it's a scam. Some people have said that. Let's address some of these myths.
I think people obviously will have strong views about this, but we believe firstly, the annual income event principle is a correct principle in terms of the law. I think that's the most important thing, So, I mean, if you earn money and you draw, obviously you've got to pay tax on it. Now, I don't think this is done for SARS to actually get more income revenue. It's obviously to apply law. I think the government has done this to make sure you've got access to money for emergencies, which you never had before. I think that's a very big thing. The second thing is you're not compelled to take this money. It's also a very important thing to say. Secondly, interestingly, also you're not compelled to take it annually. So you could leave it there and take it after 4 years, So there's basically no intention to say government now has put this thing in terms, well, that is at least in terms of our understanding as an industry. There's no intention to say, let's bring this scheme that can bring revenue, to government. But the intention is to make sure people don't resign from pension funds, they stay invested, get the benefit of compound interest, because the longer you stay invested, the more your retirement income becomes better. The one thing which also I must just add, Bongo, is that people need to remember, once you come to retirement at whatever age, you will pay yourself a salary. That's a big thing. So which means the income you earn will come from what you've saved. So the intention is to make sure when you get there in a way that can still sustain your life of preference.
And looking at the fact that it's coming into effect next week, would you say that the industry is ready to implement?
I must say, so some people have asked the question, did the industry resist this change? The big thing for us was not necessarily not buying into this. In fact, we welcome this reform. The big change or push back for us was the amount of time that we had to do the changes, which was between 12 and 18 months. We've done enormous work, and I think people will probably not understand the complexity behind putting a model like this, because remember, you used to have one fund, and now what you need to do is you need to create 3 funds. So we had to amend the rules, which the FSA had to approve, and also we had to make sure we align systems to what SARS will need to get the tax directive, and also a whole lot of education. I think the biggest pressure for us as an industry is to educate people to understand what this new retirement regime is and what it means, because there's a very interesting book called Psychology of Money that talks about the fact that money is a very emotional thing. And the biggest challenge all of us we have is our own behavior in terms of money. So the fear we have when our communication becomes quite important for us is to make sure that we can educate people, they can understand the responsibility of having access to this money. I would even say to a point that we suggest people must tap to other non-retirement options before they can come to this one. For the industry, we're ready. In fact, what will happen with many funds is that this weekend we'll start the seeding process. And obviously, each fund has got its own process in terms of how you can make an application to withdraw. There's a process maybe I just want to highlight. It's quite important for each of us to understand the implications of the withdrawal before you actually do it. So I'll suggest that you sit with the financial advisor, you get advice. SARS also has got tools, online, which can help you to basically calculate, firstly, do you have money for you to apply? And if you've got money that you can use to apply, then what is the process, and then what will be the tax implications. I think that becomes quite important.
Quite interesting. And as a final question then, what happens, for example, when someone who's a member of a pension or retirement fund gets retrenched or they resign?
That's a very important question. So you remember, when you look at retirement funds, there are different types of retirement funds. There are occupational retirement funds, there are personal retirement funds like a retirement annuity, there are what we call linked investments, preservation funds. In principle, generally, first I must say, remember your vested pot, the one you have, the rules that you've got will stay the same, which basically means you will have access, for instance, when you, now retirement means when you get to retirement, you get your 2/3 get invested to buy you annuity for income, and you can take your 1/3. Now, in the two-pot environment, basically, you'll have, it doesn't matter whether you resign, you get retrenched, disability, you get your savings portion, all of it, and then you get your vested portion, all of it, the 90% that is left, and the growth, obviously, that is accumulated to that. The only one that you won't touch is the retirement pot. The retirement pot, you'll only touch it at death, obviously, your estate, not yourself, because you won't be there. And then also in retirement. So I think that is very important to understand. The retirement pot is only accessible at retirement or when somebody is dead. But the other pots are accessible at any event like disability, retrenchment, or resignation.
All right, quite interesting. I'm getting one thing from what you're saying to us: be careful. Be careful. Don't just think that this is a fund for you to go splurging. But thank you so much for talking to us this afternoon. Appreciate it. I hope that some of those who are celebrating on social media did get a moment to be able then to at least glean from this particular conversation that was at Glacier by Sanlam CEO Khanyi Nzukuma.